well, that seems about like enough time to get going. Hi! It me. Oh, wow, I really actually do need to update that real quick. Because it's way too much opacity. There needs to be some kind of background there. Give me a second. Also, Morning Doom. How you doing today, boss? I hope you like what I've done with the place. It's nice and cozy, and definitely wasn't just me me trying to find something to do for the background here. Wow, that's the wrong choice there. How does that look? Oh, I need to save. How does that look? Okay, chat's gonna have to refresh a bit. Back at work, but it's only 3.5 days this week. Oh, hell yeah. I hope work goes well for you. Also, hello, Rio. How y'all doing? Scuff as always. I just made this overlay with this video in mind today. Also, damn, Toast has not only a roaring fire, but fireplace noises. Oh, yeah. Sorry for this being so late, by the way. I'm gonna level with you. I spent way too long trying to make a new model. By the way, hi, new model. It's just basically a slightly tweaked version of what I usually do. Also, I hope you like the score bunnies I have representing everybody in chat listening. I wanted to do something for that. Casual Toasty? No, unfortunately this is tired out of his mind Toasty, as you will see with the eye bags I edited onto my model. Yeah. Also, hello, Ambig. Late, this is almost normal. You got me there. I'm late relative to how I've been doing as of late, because as of late I've been trying to do it in the evening, and now I'm doing it in the morning. This is back to my old chicanery, back when I lived up in Washington. Which, honestly, it's good getting back to a bit of that. Also, yes, I did switch out the hoodie color, because I actually own a hoodie in this color. It's my Tonk Museum hoodie. As soon as I figure out how to get Tonk on the front of this, I will. Also, good morning, Kane. How are you doing? Also, is the fireplace too loud? I can turn that down. Yeah. The point of today is I'm just gonna read a book mostly, because I need to read more. And also because this feels like a good enough excuse to convince me to read more. And also, hey, apparently some of you guys like my voice. So, who knows? Maybe you guys will like it too. So I got my drink. I got my book. I got you guys over there. You're the score bunnies. That also took me a minute, actually, to get this set up, was finding the right background and then having to find PNGs and then realizing they weren't actually PNGs, so I had to edit them into PNGs. That was a time. As for what else I'm doing today, I will probably be sometime later this evening, or this evening, tonight, you know, potato. I'll probably be streaming like some Dark Tide or something. So if you guys want to swing by and join me for that, you're more than welcome to. Also, don't expect masterful voice acting. I can't voice act to save my life. I can barely do an impression. Have I read this book before? No. I've been meaning to. I got this over a year ago, and I've been meaning to read it. But then I'd get distracted doing literally anything else. And this is my excuse to read more books. because otherwise I will get more distracted. So if I tell myself I have to read a book every single day, every Sunday, Monday, sometime in that range for 2+ hours, I'll get some reading done. And now you guys get to join me. I'm very excited, though. I'm quite excited for this book. I've heard nothing but good things about it. Also, let me just move my toast lamp around so I can actually read it. Also, hell yeah, it has the opening crawl and the start of every 40k anything. I'm so excited for this book. Oh, also, if anybody has any recommendations, there's a channel on my Discord to post more. My brother has the first Caiaphas Cain omnibus, so that's on the list too. I will update the list probably once every week. But I have access to a Caiaphas Cain omnibus and one of the Gaunt's Ghost omnibuses, so it's going to be on there. And I'm going to get some fantasy books too. Yeah, that's about it, all I got, so let's get going. Let me move my mic actually closer to where I'm going to be reading into. Let me do that real quick. Hollow King is really good if you want an AOS one. Oh, hell yeah. I'd kill for some AOS books. Honestly, I might get one of the core rule books just to read out lore bits out of them. But anyways, enough dilly-dallying. Let's get to work. For more than 100 centuries, the Emperor has sat immobile on the golden throne of Earth. He is the master of mankind. By the might of his inexhaustible armies, 1,000,000 worlds stand against the dark. Yet, he is a rotting carcass, the carrion lord of the Imperium, held in life by marvels from the dark age of technology, and the 1,000 souls sacrificed each day so that his may continue to burn. To be a man in such times is to be one amongst untold billions. It is to live in the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable. It is to suffer an eternity of carnage and slaughter. It is to have the cries of anguish and sorrow drowned by the thirsting laughter of dark gods. This is a dark and terrible era where you will find little comfort or hope. Forget the power of technology and science. Forget the promise of progress and advancement. Forget any notion of common humanity or compassion. There is no peace among the stars, for in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. I fucking love that text scroll. Oh. Too late. Sorry there. How do I get rid of that? Is there a way to get rid of that? Nope. Wicked. Act 1, Maiden World. Nephirath. The star gods say that when we enter the fire, we shall not know death. But do you not see the tragedy? To know death is to know life. Helios. If the gods know not life, my Phaeron, what do they know? Nephirath. Hate, Helios. Eternal and unending. An excerpt from The War in Heaven, Act 1, Scene 5, lines 3 through 5. Before I continue, do you think that's that one play that the Necrons have that takes a literal decade to go through and has an extra after credit scene that takes like another year? You think it's that one? By the way, if you didn't know that, in lore, Necrons have a play that takes a decade and has an extra credit scene that takes like a year. I was just thinking it was probably that. Probably. Chapter 1. Before the being called the Emperor revealed himself. Before the rise of the Eldari, before the Necrontyr traded their flesh for an immortal metal, the world was born in violence. And despite everything that would happen, this violence was more terrible than any the world later witnessed. For sweeping battlefronts are nothing compared to the torture of geologic change, and no warhead, no matter how large, can equal 1 billion years of volcanic upheaval. It was a nameless world, for no one yet lived there to name it. Ice sheets as tall as a battlecruiser expanded and retreated. Tectonic plates ground continents together, their collision pushing up mountain ridges like teeth in the gums of a child. In the world's great ocean, an undersea volcano spewed white-hot magma into the darkness of the oceanic floor, gradually building up an island, and then another. The oceanic plate moved across the hotspot, carrying the created islands northwest as the volcanic boil continued to vent itself into the cold, black water. A long archipelago formed, like the dot dash of an ancient code running across the jeweled blue of the sea. The first civilizations rose around these islands, and in a manner of speaking. Microorganisms ruled the warm waters, their battle for survival as worthy as any that would come after. But their struggles, their triumphs, and their cannibalisms went unremarked, even by the organisms themselves. Sentience was an unneeded complication. Then came the great city builders, colonies of coral polyps that erected great funnel towers, branching architectural lattices in green and magenta, cities full of life and activity. And like every great civilization, they built upon the skeletons of those that had gone before, layer by layer, each generation withering and ossifying. So the living stood unthinking upon a vast necropolis of their predecessors. Yes, they went unremarked, except by this book, even though there's no one here yet to witness them. Perhaps the fish that weaved through these great reefs were the first sentient beings on the world. They had little emotion other than fear, pain, and hunger. Yet their arrival presaged a new era. No longer was life there a march of unfeeling organisms that existed in order to exist. They could now perceive. When the great lizards emerged from the water, the struggle became one of legs and muscle and hearts beating blood fast through strong chambers. And though these great lizards were little more intelligent than the fish, they felt. They felt the pleasure of hot blood on their tongues, the agony of a festering wound, and maternal protectiveness. They died in great numbers, rotting corpses ground and crushed by geological processes into diamonds and crude oil that other beings would, in time, murder each other to possess. And a few, just a few, would enter a state of deathless preservation, trapped in silt and unable to fully decay. The calcium of their bones replaced atom by atom with rock until they were nothing but stone skeletons. Immortal in form, yet with nothing of their bodies remaining, a mockery of the vital living creatures they once wore. Life on the nameless world continued this way for billions of years, unheeded by the rest of the galaxy. But then, one night, a saurian scavenger sniffed the wind, sensing something had changed. Pointing her long snout to the sky, she took in a sight that had never been encountered before. New stars burned in the rainbow smear of the sky, points of light that clustered together with unnatural regularity. Lights that glowed with balefires, green as the island canopies, and moved across the sky as clouds did. To the scavenger's rudimentary brain, strange visual information like this could only be a hallucination brought on by consuming one of the island's poisonous plants. Her body triggered a purge reflex, vomiting egg yolk and root plants before she darted for the twisted labyrinth of ground trees. As the scavenger watched, judging the large threat, the lights descended. The creatures were large, with great sickle wings swept forward, and bodies so black they barely stood out against the night. Like any who survived on the island, the scavenger knew a predator when she saw one. Cold emerald light spilled from the creatures' bellies, and the scavenger detected the foreign scent of sand baked onto glass. Two-legged creatures stepped out of the emanation, feet shattering the plate of fused beach. Starlight glinted off their bodies like sun on the sea, and their eyes burned the same green as the lights on the flying predators. This world would be nameless no longer. Ah, wicked, we just found the Necrons. Necrons just showed up. Hell yeah. Oh, God. Robert Rath is very talented and has immediately set a tone, and I'm very excited for the rest of this. Oh, so sorry, I'm thirsty. You'll probably hear me drinking a lot. There's Necrons in this book. Oh my gosh, egads! How could I have ever seen this coming, with the fact that there's two of them on the book, and technically two of them twice on the thumbnail? By the way, I realized after posting the announcement for this stream that the thumbnail is horrifically off-center. And now that I know that, I have to make a new thumbnail. But that's also next on my mission list for this project anyway, so yeah. Yes, Dexcom, I'm aware. I already dosed insulin to fix my blood sugar. I'm gonna dose more, actually. Give me just a second. The diabetic has to do diabetes things. I know, it's such a tragedy. Also, don't worry, I'm taking care of myself. Chapter 2. The Eldari world of Seraphil, Eastern Fringe 10,000 years before the Great Awakening. Ancient stories, passed from the lips of spirit singer to spirit singer, held that anyone who touched the stone would burn. Thy hand shall curl and turn black, thy back teeth glow white hot, thy bones crack like fire logs, for I have drunk from elder sons. The songs held that the gemstone was a meteorite, wandering semi-sentient, absorbing the energy of each star it passed. During the war in heaven, it was said that warriors had used this to channel the gods themselves. Trazyn, however, had learned long ago not to believe the absurdities of Eldari folklore. Ancient though their race was, they were still given to the follies of an organic brain. Trazyn had traveled the galaxy for so long, he'd forgotten what year he'd started, collecting, studying, ordering the cultures of the cosmos. And one thing he'd learned, that every society thought their mountain was special. That it was more sacred than the mountain worshipped by their neighboring tribe. That it was the one true axis of the universe. Even when informed that their sacred ridge was merely the random connection of tectonic plates, or their blessed sword a very old but relatively common alien relic, revelation they universally did not appreciate, he found they clung to their stories. Which is not to say there are not gods in the firmament, of course. Trazyn knew that there were, because he helped kill them. But he also found that what most societies took to be gods were the inventions of their own charmingly fanciful imaginations. But though he did not believe the gem channeled ancient gods, that did not mean it was not worth saving, or worth the Eldari protecting. Indeed, the sounds of a siege echoed through their bone halls. Trazyn allowed a portion of his consciousness to stray. If only to monitor the situation, part of his mind worked the problem at hand, The other looked through the oculars of his Lich Guard captain. Through the being eyes, he saw that his Lich Guard phalanx still held the gates of the temple. Those in the front rank had locked their dispersion shields in a wall, each raising their hyperphase sword like the hammer of a cocked pistol. Behind them, those in the second rank held their war scythes as spears, thrusting them over the shoulders of their comrades so the entire formation bristled with humming blades. Perfectly uniform, Trazen noticed, and perfectly still. Exodite bodies littered the steps before them, feather-adorned mesh armor split with surgical straight lines, limbs and heads detached. His olfactory sensors identified particles of cooked muscle in the air. Another attack was massing. In the garden plaza before the temple, where 5 dirt streets converged, Eldari Exodites flitted between the decorative plants and idols carved from massive bones. In the distance, you could see the lumbering form of a great lizard, long-necked and powerful, with twin prism cannons slung on its humped back. Trazen marked it as a target for the two doom size flying a support pattern overhead. Shuriken rounds swept in, rattling Necron shields like sleet on a window pane. One disc sailed into the ocular cavity of the Lich Guard and lodged there, bisecting the grim fire of his eye. The warrior did not react, did not break formation. With a shriek of protesting metal, the living alloy in his skull forced the monomolecular disc free and it fluttered to the steps like a falling leaf. Trazen looked at the pattern of it through the captain's vision. Circular, with double spiral channels, a common Eldari design not worth acquiring. He sensed a change in the air and looked up to see the first Doom Scythe streaking down an attack run. At the last moment, the great lizard heard it, rotated around its serpentine head to stare at the incoming comet. A white-hot beam... a beam of white-hot energy lanced from the Doom Scythe's fuselage, tracing a line of flame through the lush undergrowth. It passed through the creature's long neck, and the top third of it fell like a cut tree branch. The great body staggered, healed, stayed upright. Then the next Doom Scythe lanced it through the midsection, set off the payload in its prism cannons. Cascading detonations tore the creature apart, the purple energy blast throwing the weapon's crew hundreds of cubits away. Pity, Trazen thought as he watched the carcass burn. I wanted one of those. But he had no time for such side projects. The conch shell horns sounded across the rainforest-girdled spires of the city, and he already could see more great lizards lumbering toward the temple. One rotated a twin-barreled shuriken cannon towards the sky and began spitting fire at their retreating sides. Though they were primitive, once the Exodites marshaled their numbers, his small acquisition force would be overwhelmed. Sephiroth was awakening to defend its world spirit. Trazen left the Lich Guard captain's body, rejoined his consciousness, and focused on the task at hand. Before him stretched a long wraithbone corridor, likely salvaged from whatever craft world these fundamentalists used to begin their self-imposed exile. Bas-relief carvings depicted the society's exodus, fashioned from the bones of the great lizards decorating the walls. Trazen had been scrying for traps, detecting pressure plates in a huge mechanical fulcrum hidden in the masonry. Beyond that waited cyclopean gates of the inner chamber. He finished calculations and he saw the way through. Trazen picked up his empathic obliterator and strode into the corridor. Eyeholes in the bas-reliefs coughed, sending clouds of bone darts shattering off his necrodermis. Trazen snatched one out of the air and analyzed the tip. Also, hello, cat. Hi. Don't worry, you're not late. I'm late. Trust me, I'm miles later than you are. Trazen snatched out one... Yeah. Bugger me, I gotta refine my stride now. Trazen snatched one out of the air and analyzed the tip, an exotic poison derived from a local marine invertebrate, unique to this world. He slipped it into a dimensional pocket and continued forward, sensing the stone shift and sink beneath him. A piece of masonry, hammer-shaped and weighing 6 tons, swept down at him like a pendulum. Trazen waved at it without stopping, the stasis projection from his palm emitter halting its progress mid-swing. He passed it without a glance, its surface vibrating with potential energy. Finally, the gate. Tall as a monolith, it was decorated with exquisite carvings of Eldari gods. A vertical strip of runes laid out a poem riddle so fiendish, it would stop even the wisest if they did not know the obscure lore of the... Oh, God. Great, I gotta read a language that's made up for this nonsense. Taliak Sewinum, intoned Trazen, turning sideways so he could slip through the gates as they ground open. Normally, he would have put some effort into it, solved it by thought, then performed a textual analysis. Trazen enjoyed riddles. They revealed so much about the cultures that shaped them. But a gnomic notice from his Lich Guard suggests that the Exodites were pressing harder than anticipated. No time for amusing diversions. Come on, Rio, Look, if you had infinity to determine what you're going to do things, wouldn't you become a nerd about your favorite stuff, too? He hadn't paused to process the meaning of the runes, just fed them through his lexicographic database and cross-referenced double meanings, inferences, and mythological connotations. Even now, he could not explain what the answer to the riddle was, or what it meant. It was merely a linguistic equation. A problem with an answer. An answer that he thought would bring him into the presence of the word spirit. The chamber swept up around him like a cavernous grotto, its upper trenches lost in the echoing vaults of the ceiling. His metal feet sounded off a causeway, its wraith bone marbled with veins of gold. Filigreed balustrades on either side mimicked the coral of the ocean depths. For Sephiroth was a world of warm seas and lush archipelagos. Archipelagos? I don't know. On either side of the walkway, pools of liquid platinum cast a watery light across the walls. Now, he muttered to himself, where are you, my lovely? Before him rose the world spirit. It curved ahead, laid into the vaulted surface of the far wall. It, too, was made of bone, but rather than the old, inert wraith bone of the walls and ceiling, this sprouted alive from the floor, branching like a fan of tree roots that had grown up instead of down. No, Trazen corrected, that was not quite accurate. His oculars stripped away the outer layers of the world spirit, refocusing on the veins of energy that ran through the psychoactive material. Arcane power pulsed to and fro in a circulatory system, racing through arteries and nerves as it traveled to the highest forks of the network and back to the floor. Not roots, then. Antlers. Yes, that was it. A great set of antlers, large as a mountain, the points of its forks curving away from the wall. Here and there sprouted buds, fuzzy with new growth. Exquisite. Stepping closer, Trazen appraised the object. The substance was not wraithbone, he noted, at least not entirely. This was a hybrid, a substitute grown from the skeletons of the great lizards and interwoven with the psychoplastic wraithbone salvaged from their crashed ship. A gene sequence Scry failed to find where one substance began and another one ended. No points where the ancient craftsmanship had been fused or grafted the two metals together. This was a seamless blend, nurtured and shaped over millions of years, wraithbone woven between the molecules of reactive, but lower quality, Dinosaur remains, a masterwork by one of the finest bone singers in the galaxy, an act of artistry and devotion that was at once temple, mausoleum, and metropolis. A place for the souls of his slain Eldari ancestors to be at rest, united and safeguarded from the hungry guards of the Aether. Trazen carried towards it on tireless legs, craning his hunched neck to see where the highest forks disappeared in the darkness of vault. Once, his own kind had been able to accomplish work such as this. But the process of biotransference, the blighted gift that had moved their consciousness to deathless metal bodies, had also burned away nearly all artistry. His kind were no longer artists or poets. Those few that retained the knack found their powers diminished. Now they were forged rather than created. A work that took this much care, this much love, was beyond them. Such a shame he could not take the whole thing. Given time, he could extract it, of course, perhaps even lock the entire temple in a stasis field and transplant it whole to his historical gallery on Solomon's. To have the gemstone in its original context would be a rare coup, but somehow these primitives had sensed the long coming of his acquisition failings, and there was no time. In truth, he had broken protocol by waking even 30 of the Lich Guard before their time. Doing so had even damaged their neural matrices, making them little more than automatons that followed tactical programs and explicit commands. But if they could not remember this expedition, all the better. Trazen wasn't supposed to be here anyways. He approached the base of the World Spirit. The chamber was a full league across, and beheld the true genius of its creation. Oh, god damn it. Missed my page. Oh, I messed up my page now. Oh, wicked. Also, Rio, you may be a nerd, but you're one hell of a nerd, and I love you for it. You're an awesome guy. The structure sprouted from the skull of a predator lizard, twice Trazen's height. Its lower jaw removed and sickle-like upper teeth buried in the wraithbone floor. A glow like the orange light cast by wind-stoked embers emanated from the cavities of the creature's eye sockets. Trazen's vision stripped away layers of bones, and he saw the gemstone embedded in the predator's fist-sized brain cavity. A carnosaur. Astonishing. He brushed a metal hand over the skull's cranium and emitted an emitter in the palm, casting electromagnetic radiation through its core. It was old, older than he had thought possible. Indeed, perhaps Trajan should have tempered his dismissal of the Eldari tales, for it was indeed a meteorite, and one of extreme antiquity and unknown makeup. He reviewed the spectromantic divination results manually to confirm his findings. Given the age of the components, their degradation, and the style on the beam-cut faces of Gem, it was entirely possible that it dated from the Worn Heaven. A delicious shiver passed through Trazen's circuitry. "Well met, my dear," he said, his cooing tone offset by the hollow echo of his vocal emitter. "It is not so often that I meet a thing as old as I am." He was so entranced, in fact, that he didn't see the Dragon Riders coming. Deep focus tended to his dim circumspection protocols, and the beast's footfalls had been masked by a training in sorcery. And for all his inputs, scryers, protocols, and diviners, the movements of the Empyrean were muffled in his senses. When it came to warp sorcery, he was like a deaf man at a dinner table, able to make out words through deafened sounds and lip reading, but unable to even notice the voices behind his back. An interstitial alert flashed in his vision, and he wheeled, dialing back his chronosense to slow the world and give himself time to calculate a microsecond decision. Scales, claws, and sawtooth fangs were about to break on him like a wave. 20 cavalry riding knee to knee in tight formation. Wraithbone lances braced, tattooed swirls on arrowhead shark faces. Scrimshawed charms dangled from the halters of their raptor mounts, and each leather harness crisscrossing a scaled snout that ended in flared nostrils and hooked teeth. The raptors, underwater slowing Trazen's enhanced vision, swung their avian frames low, shifting weight to their bunched haunches in preparation for a final lunge. One lance came at him so directly its tip looked like a circle in his vision. Minimal options, none attractive, but his proximity to the world spirit at least given him a moment to act as they pulled their charge, afraid of smashing into their venerated ancestral tomb. Trazen slid left, past the first lance tip. Before the warrior could swing the long weapon around, Trazen gripped the shaft and tore the tattooed aspect warrior from his saddle. He watched the rider's face twist as he fell from the mount, long hair flying free and hands sheltering his face as he stumbled to the bone floor. Trazen, who is called infinite, a voice said. It was not audible speech, nor was it telepathy to which he was immune. Instead, it was a wavelength of psychic pulses on his auditory transducer to mimic language. One of these riders must be a farseer. He ignored it. The riderless raptor struck at him, closing jaws on the place where his ribcage met his hooded neck. Trazen had overcommitted himself and could not dodge. You will not keep what you seek. Hooked teeth met the cold surface of his necrodermis and shattered. Trazen channeled kinetic force into his fist and punched the dinosaur in the throat. The motherfucker just punched the raptor. When are we getting Trazen in the next Jurassic Park movie? I feel like he just turned into a slaughter. Well, no, he turned into a field trip to collect things. Vertebrae propped, cartilage tore, the raptor went down with the noise of a bugle player experiencing sudden and unbearable agony. Listen to the song. This world sings for the blood of Trazen. And it was true. Even through the syrupy haze of slowed time, he could hear the keening chants of the night. That he did not have blood was no matter. These Eldari wanted it anyway. But their formation was not optimized to deal with a single opponent. It was jumbling, folding as the knights tried to get him, and he had just created a gap. The unit tried to wheel on itself. Trazen slipped through the hole in their line, making sure to step on the fallen warrior on his way through. Behind him, the riders collided and mixed. Eldari, he scoffed. So old and wise. You are children to us. This world spirit is our ancestry, Trazen. Our culture, our dead. And it will wither without the solar gem. And that's when Trazen saw the Carnosaur. He missed it before now, his focus overwhelmed by the charging raptor riders and senses clouded by witchery. It reared above him, its well-muscled chest protected by a breastplate shaped from dinosaurid bone, twin-linked shuriken cannons emerging like tusks from his chin. Serrated blades fashioned from the teeth of aquatic predators studded the armor plates and clamped to its feet and spine. A calcium scythe capped its lashing tail. And on its back, the Farseer, her willow-thin face half covered by the mask of an unfamiliar god, graceful frame and armored in mother of pearl, and pink hair gathered into a topknot. We have long known that you desire it, but if you take it, the world spirit would die. If you knew I was coming, Trazen said, you should have made a contingency plan. I knew you will return, the Farseer said, but I will still enjoy this. The Carnosaur bit down on him at the waist, his whole upper half trapped inside the wet darkness of its mouth. 9-inch fangs. Even now, he could not stop analyzing. Catalogs sank through the tubes and pelvic ambulation structures of his torso. Vital systems tore and failed. Emerald sparks erupted from the wound, and lighting the interior of the Carnosaur's mouth with baleful flashes. He felt his legs separate. Trazen channeled his diminishing reserves into a fist and reshaped it into a brutal spike. He stabbed the Carnosaur's lashing tongue, hot reptilian blood spurting all over his oculars. To his annoyance, his systems autonomously ran an analysis of the genetic makeup. He marked it to read later. The muscular tongue flipped and rolled him to the side. He sprawled, saw a sawtooth strip of light as the jaws opened. He regretted slowing his chronosense as he watched the row of jagged teeth close in on him, puncturing his oculars, driving through his neural fiber spools, and crushing his skull. And that's chapter 2. Trazen has already was one of my favorite characters. Motherfucker just punched a raptor. He's one of my favorite characters. He punched a raptor. That's badass. I knew I should have read this book sooner, but I should have read this book sooner. If I'd known that the first thing that Trazen does is he punches a fucking raptor, I would have read it sooner. How long have we been going? 43 minutes. Alright, not bad. Yeah. Also, yes, I know I'm a nerd. I have a VTuber model. I'm a nerd. Chapter 3. Oh, that's indeed badass and kind of concerned. To be fair, what else was he gonna do? Like, he doesn't... I mean, I guess he could have used his empathic obliterate. I wonder if he uses that. I'm not gonna spoil what the empathic obliterator is, because if he uses it, it'll probably explain it anyways. But, like, you know. Also, again, Kat, you are probably the first person I've talked to about a lot of 40k lore, and your reaction has not been, that's really cool, or really dumb. It's been, that's really concerning. I always find it funny when I see that. Also, how are you doing today, Kat? I didn't really have a chance to ask you how you're doing today, because you kind of joined in the middle. Also, do you like the score bunnies? I feel like I should get another score bunny plush, actually, because I have 3. And I've got 2 big ones on my bed. It'll be fine. I'm good, just playing Death Stranding 2. Nice. Also, yes, you like the room? Hell yeah. I'm glad you like it. If I knew how to do any 3D modeling, I'd make a room like on my own. Or actually, I guess I could like make something in a game. Oh, I could make something in Fallout. Okay, so I might be playing Fallout 4 relatively soon, and just like recording a long stream of gameplay ambience. Wicked. VR chat has some pretty good plays. I could do VR chat too. I'll have to look into it. I've got a few days before my next one. Next one of these. Although I could do one Thursday, like after work. I'll think about it. Anyways, I got more book to read. Chapter 3. The world song moves us. It speaks to us. Touch the rocks, young warrior, and you will feel it vibrate the very stone. When the metal glutton comes, you will know it is time to fight for this world. Prophecies of Alunica of Sephiroth. Tablet 7, Inscription 12. Trazen, did not, on the whole, enjoy being dead. Which is why, unlike the Eldari sorceress, he'd made contingencies. His consciousness rushed to the Lich Guard captain's mind, overriding the native personality and banishing it to the depths of the captain's engrammatic databanks. Depending on the host, this could be a struggle, but the captain had awoken from stasis damage and simple, an easy takeover. It was a state Trazen preferred in his companions, to be honest, since it made them less likely to speak of what they'd witnessed. The Awakened Council knew of Trazen's project and his galleries, but not everything he collected would meet their approval, and they would particularly disapprove of awakening their kin early and getting them destroyed for a personal venture like this. Within a second, he reshaped the captain's malleable necrodermis, the living metal flowing and changing to take on Trazen's familiar shape. His hood sprang up segment by segment, rising over his head as the Lich Guard's death mask rearranged into his own features. A cloak grew out from his shoulders, each scale popping into existence with a little ping. When he regained his vocal control, the first thing he said was, "Damn." His newly hijacked oculars had told him things were no longer running to plan. 4 Lich Guard lay on the steps, sparking green, their metal flesh attempting to knit together despite horrendous wounds. The shuriken fire was a torrent now, coming from every angle. Skirmishers fired and moved in blurs so fast that Trazen could barely see their troop type. One doom scythe wobbled by, its exterior choked by pterosaurs? I think that's how you say it. Pterosaurs that had hooked onto its superstructure, digging into its wires and its exposed cockpit. As he watched, one took the pilot's head in its beak and, with a twist of its long neck, snapped it away. The doom scythe lost control and tumbled into the rainforest like a tossed coin. It struck the plaza and plowed through a bone god column before detonating in a superheated blast of smoke and emerald lightning. He had brought a team of only 30 Lich Guard, a Night Scythe for transportation, and 2 Doom Scythes for aerial cover. The Sword of Force saw not raise any alarms among the Council upon its awakening. Even for the Eldari, whose speed makes them dangerous, that was generally enough. A shock assault forced to secure the target or create a diversion while Trazen recovered the specimen. On a normal acquisition, they were on the ground for no longer than an hour, often half that. They usually withdrew just as the locals mounted a response. But the counterattack had been almost instantaneous, as if the Eldari had detected the Necron air assets, or sensed the distortion of the Night Scythe's transport wormhole. Or they foresaw me coming, Trazen thought. Cursed witches. A pterosaur, its hide painted ochre with handprints, dived into the formation, snatched up a Lich Guard like a bird of prey taking a rodent. It flew the struggling warrior up into the air, its rider leaning out of the saddle almost upside down to riddle the Necron with dual shuriken pistols. Then the beast dropped him 300 cubits into the plaza flagstones. Trazen saw more pterosaur riders incoming, a V in the sky, preparing to heel over and dive. "Fall back," he cried. "Fall back inside the temple. Defend the sanctum. Beware aerial attacks." The force retreated in lockstep, without a glance backward to place their feet. He summoned his empathic obliterator, the long haft of the weapon starting in his palm and building itself one atom at a time until it stood 8 feet tall and pointed from pointed base to the glowing jade wings of its head. Trazen swept it over his formation, doubling their marching speed, and then pointed the obliterator's inbuilt resurrection orb at the fallen Lich Guard, watching their shattered bodies glowed with arcane energies, spines snapping and joints popping as bent limbs straightened and dismembered pieces flew together as if magnetized. As the tide of Eldari surged up the steps, a Lich Guard sprang back to his feet among them, one arm still missing, its hyperphase sword carved bloody crescents in the exodites. The Eldari skirmishers fell upon them and the other rising dead, piercing their metal bodies with knives. "That should stall them," Trazyn said, and turned back to the temple. He passed the outer sanctum of the coral statuary, tramped through a rain of poisoned darts in the corridor, and pushed the hammered column, still locked in stasis, contemptuously aside. This time he uttered no riddle. He simply took his obliterator in both hands and brought it down on the join. Legend held that the weapon contained a relic from a long-vanished species, a talisman of power designed to break the minds and souls of lesser races. That seemed, as far as Trazyn was concerned, accurate. The great winged staff had connected with the lightning flash and the acrid smell of disintegrated stone. An energy discharge rocked the huge gates on their hinges, blowing them backward and spreading cracks for 5 cubits down the wraithbone floor. Trazyn strode out on the causeway and saw what he expected. Knights in formation, already urging their slaving beasts towards him. And the Farseer behind, her Carnosaur's footfalls shaking the chamber, its roaring defiance through teeth stained with his own blood and blackened by the fire of Trazyn's last death. As much as he hated them, they were exquisite. Burnished wraithbone helms, millions of years old, shining in the watery light of the platinum pools. Lance pendants woven from void silk, insubstantial as smoke, streaming. The terrible majesty of the mutated Carnosaur on the regality of its rider, her shoulders burdened with a cloak fashioned from the plumage of native birds. They made the causeway, bore down on him. He, in turn, held up a cube darker than the emptiness of space. Prismatic light speared out in a beam, danced on the lead rider, and spread an arc, questing, analyzing, measuring the dimensions of each rippling muscle and strand of perfumed hair. A keening whine emanated from the box. It shook in Trazyn's mechanical grip. He triggered the lock. The charge stopped. It did not falter or pull back, it merely ceased movement. Raptors froze mid-leap, the Carnosaur's bellow was cut off. All was still, save for the void silk banners, which, due to their unusual physical properties, continued to slowly ripple in a non-existent wind. And then it was gone. All of it. Not even a cent remained. Trazyn walked through the empty air and approached the world spirit. He so disliked to run, but the shortness of time hastened his footsteps. "Do not worry," he said to the cube, which burned so cold that none but a Necron would be able to hold it. "You will not be separated from your beloved gem." Trazyn plunged a fist through the ancient Carnosaur skull. Its brittle structure cracked and sundered under the blow. Eldari souls rushed up from the fractured column like embers, drifting out of whatever wraithbone had been woven around and through it. He closed his hand around the gem and pulled it free. His hand did not curl and blacken. His black teeth did not go white hot. His bones did not crack. And he had no regrets. Until, at least, he received the security alert. Something had broken loose on Solemnus. It was easier if he focused on small things. The world of the cosmos was too vast, too chaotic. There was no order of operation. Like a neural circuit full of tangled wires, it was impossible to know where each led until you took it between your fingers and follow it. Knowing where to start, that was the hard part. So he started from the beginning. Actually, I want to make sure I didn't just accidentally go to Okay, good. So he started from the beginning, when all matter lay in the same place. Orderly, satisfying, nothing but oneness and potential energy. The last moment when the universe was truly at peace. He savored it, aware that it was not real. Indeed, there is no guarantee the universe began this way at all. It was merely an n-gram simulation of a theorem. A meditative aid authentic enough to trick his own mind into emptying so he could feel the flows of time and matter. During powerful rituals, whole solar cycles would pass with him in this state. And he let it happen. An explosion. He screened out the noise and clutter, focusing on what he wanted to find, and saw it, and he followed it. A single particle tumbled through the dark. Then light was born, and he saw the little mote whisked away on the eddies of the void, collecting with other particles of its type. He watched ages pass as it built from a speck to a rock to a meteorite. He watched it, haloed by its flame, enter the atmosphere and bury itself in a nameless continent. Watched as a Necron extractor wraith bored the meteorite free. Necrodermis can be reused an infinite number of times. The particle was first embedded in the hip joint of a warrior, then a monolith's hull, a piece of jewelry lost and recycled. Then, yes, there it was. Inside a cable and in a doorway, neurocircuitry panel. Ancient, faulty, its alloy impure from the moment of creation untold ages ago, stressed from overuse, half-life draining. Waiting for the moment it was fated to short. He reached out with a spectral moment and helped the moment come. Glyphs, each as tall as the intruder, lit up in 2 rows, sigils of protection, threatening death to any that dare enter without the assent of Trazen, overlord of solemnness. The threat might have been more potent if the glyphs themselves were not guttering like lampwicks in a gale, the electrical fault cascading through the gateway. Finally, the great slab ground backward and parted between the columns of glyphs, each massive piece separating and sliding behind the inner wall of the chamber. Trazen had been collecting artifacts for his gallery for aeons now. Not even the dead gods themselves knew how long, and while he knew his collection better than any being alive, the sprawling complex of halls and exhibition spaces was as much a labyrinth to him as it was to any intruder. The ancient wraiths followed standing orders to build outward, meaning that the facility sprawled in every direction, with chambers Trazen himself had never commissioned or even visited. Some proved perfect for housing new acquisitions, while others languished and forgotten for millennia. This was one such forgotten gallery. Empty and sterile, sealed directly after its creation. No construction debris marred its shining black stone floor. Not even dust settled on the empty display plates. Before the intruder lay a group of work scarabs. They lay on their backs like stones, collected together in a river. Spindly legs pointing skyward to harvest the ambient energy waves to power their dormant energy banks. The intruder stirred his metal fingers over the mindless drones, casting an interstitial command that awakened them from their slumber. He followed by interlocking his fingers in the hexagram of Thule, severing them from the security network. He knelt down to their level, leaning heavily on his staff. For a moment he paused to admire the aquamarine plates of their carapace, gold filigree set in ancient geometric circuit patterns and laid in their jeweled casings. Oh boy. Nihilaka dynasty, the intruder thought, sighing. So rich, yet so vulgar. Not even the lowest scarab escapes your garish eye. Then, leaning down to the awakened scarabs, he whispered where he wanted to go. Legs skittered on the hard surface of the floor, almost in excitement. The swarm departed as one, milling around the intruder and passing over his clawed feet in their haste to direct him to the proper corridor. Orican the Diviner, Master Astromancer of the Sautek dynasty, Architect of Time, and the last seer of the Necron tier, followed them. Yay, we've met both our main characters now. Hooray! Trazen stepped out of the wormhole and closed it behind him. No one else would be coming back. It had been a near-run thing. Oh, yay. It had been a near-run thing. Much closer than he would have liked. With the world spirit bleeding power, the panicking Eldari savages had overwhelmed the Lich Guard defending the temple's gateway and forced themselves inside. Trazen had fled upward, climbing lizard-ribbed stairways to an upper gallery, and he'd use his obliterator to blast a passageway through the Wraithbone Dome. The Night Scythe had been waiting for him outside, hovering upside down to protect the captive wormhole on its belly. Its wings were scored to black metal by the shuriken volleys peppering it from below, gold and green decorative dermis flaking off like rust. Trazen got a glimpse of the Eldari temple complex, the rainforest canopy far below him, broken here and there by monoliths and bone arches, before he leapt onto the underside of the scythe, strode across its pitted skin, and dropped into the wormhole. He left the scythes with an order to return, or, if too heavily damaged, expend all ammunition, then ram into a high-priority target. Preferably one of those cursed carnosaurs. Chief Archivist, Overlord, Master, Sanit the Light Sculptor, Trazen's Chief Curator, knelt. His 8-fingered hands displayed on the polished floor in obeisance. Solemnus rejoices at your return. Does it? Trazen responded, looking around at the receiving party. It was just Sanit, accompanied by an archive wraith ready to retrieve the artifacts. Behind them, a hallway wide enough to refurbish a battle barge stretched empty for thousands of cubits. I see. Solomons was not rejoicing. Indeed, it would not celebrate anything. By Trazen's calculations, for 10 millennia or so, Solomnus was a dormant world, its officials, warriors, and servants in the stasis death of the Great Sleep. Only Trazen had awakened early. He needed a mere skeleton crew to keep the world running at the standard he preferred. A successful endeavor, my lord? Trazen swept a hand over the stasis caskets on the wraith's back. The jeweled box opened, pale wisps of blue vapor curling from their interiors. Trazen set the gem into the larger box and closed the lid manually, ensuring it locked. Also, yes, skeleton crew. Space Egyptian Terminators got the skeleton crews, gotta love it. He nestled the Tesseract labyrinth containing the Eldari warhost in the smaller box, giving its top a merry tap for good measure. My lord, is this for archive or display? Sanit conjured a stylus out of his necrodermis and held it expectantly over the Phosglyph projection tablet that had hovered in his hand. The primitives shall be displayed in the Eldari Diaspora Gallery with the rest of their kin. Between the craft worlders and the Drukari displays, I assume? The stylus danced on the light of the hologram's tablet as Sanit spoke. Normally a Necron would not need such a thing, but like many who had arisen from the Great Sleep, Sanit's neural matrix had degraded over 60 million years. Years? Bleh. Deterioration had affected his short-term mnemonics, and he could remember chains of code hexes, yet failed to recall what had just been said. The constant note-taking, obnoxious as it was, helped with that. Auditory information would not imprint on his engrams, but the tactile experience of writing the words created a workaround. Though he could no longer serve as the cryptech he'd once been, Trazen valued him for his skill with hard light hologram projections, the method he had chosen to display his collection. Everyone had their damage. Of the few who'd already arisen, several of the old highborn of the Necron tier emerged not knowing their names. Others were complete automatons or even mad. In dark moments, Trazen feared that in 10,000 years, when the dynasties began to awaken in full, he would find all of his peers had diminished. Not he, though. Treason had emerged with his faculties entirely intact. My lord, Sanic cocked his head, the aperture of his single cyclopic eye narrowing. Permission to repeat the question? Oh, you may. And what shall I do with the gem? The gem. Treason mused. He folded his hands and tapped his index to finger with a soft tink, tink, tink. Upon reconsideration, I shall handle this specimen myself. He opened the box and scooped up the precious stone, feeling its warmth, and stowed it amongst a collection of trinkets hanging at his hip. The determination will have to wait, pending appraisal, of course. This may be one of the oldest objects yet collected. Meet me in the War in Heaven gallery. Treason turned to go, summoning his catacomb command barge with a thought, then stopped. The interstitial message burned in the corner of his vision, the holographic phosglyphs casting a jade glow on Treason's death mask. Security glyphs blinked on its message seal. He opened the message, unfurling it downward like a scroll, absorbing the technical data like a calculation machine he was. What's this, Sanit? Sanit opened an identical alert. An exhibit breach in the Dawnwood sector. Gallery what's M's 50 in Roman numerals? 50, 70, 73. Sorry, it took me a minute. 73. Thoth subcontinent. Coordinates 52.941472. Negative 1.174056. The Hrud burrow ecosystem, Treason snarled. He conjured up a holographic image. Oh god, not the Hrud. Perturabo's gonna be pissed. The image was dim in color, tinged with the green corpuscent of the cryopraise projection, but the visuals were crisp and comprehensible. A barrel-shaped container of earth, 4,000 cubits wide and 3,000 tall, floated in suspensor fields at the center of a vast chamber. Long-limbed creatures milled about the top, struggling from holes in its surface. Treason sliced at the hologram with his fingers, and it split in two like a cutaway schematic. On the inside of the earthen plug, tunnels wormed their way between vaulted worship chambers and earthen family burrows. Hi, Apple. Yes, it's story time. I will give you the recap after I'm done with this chapter. The Hrud scrambled upward, sensing their moment to escape had come. After all, they had been imprisoned inside hard-light holograms, caught like insects in amber, for at least 2 millennia. Thoughts frozen at the moment of their acquisition, with only the most astute and neurologically gifted sensing that any time had passed at all. Those races steeped in the Empyrean, for whom the tides of the warp were part of their very makeup, tended to not fare as well. They tended to go mad. Like these Hrud, for instance, tearing each other apart with their shovel-like digging claws, spattering odd, viscous flesh on the tunnel walls. Strange arms, articulated like a spine, doubled in on themselves as they struck at each other like drovers whipping a herd. Seismic activity? Treason asked. That was usually the case. No reports of stasis field failure on the tectonic plates, Lord Archivist, Senate replied. Tesseract restart protocol and stasis containment not answering. Deploy the containment phalanx, Treason said, with swiftness. And hurt the exhibits, my lord. They're panicking, trying to dig out, Treason said, pointing at the milling creatures choking the corridors. A few had split off and were tearing at the walls, trying to find the sunlight they so despised. Anything but the centuries of claustrophobic dark. I have at least 10,000 more HRUD in storage, but gods know when I'll acquire another intact burrow. Act now and we can minimize the tunnel and gallery collapses and repopulate the display. Sennett's multi-jointed finger danced over a floating glyph panel, making Trazen recall the waving sea anemones of the world spirit chamber. Immortals, Lord? Indeed. Reality cracked and sizzled among the panicking crowd. Green energy blossoms searing into being as the Immortals translated to the display surface. HRUD dropped, arms nodding and beating the ground in spontaneous seizure. Lesser creatures, Trazen reflected. So vulnerable to translation proximity. He made a mnemonic record of the thought, factoring into his next acquisition venture. Wasteful to harm a specimen unnecessarily. The Immortals swung their double-barreled Gauss blasters up as one and picked their first shot. Each one acquired a different target. No redundancy, no wasted effort, no need to strategize. Network combat algorithms meant every Immortal knew the other's next action. They tracked their firing solutions as they waited for the order. Execute, said Trazen, sending the impulse command before the words even left his lipless mouth. Ropey beams of energy erupted from the Gauss blasters, pulling the HRUD apart from the inside out, coiled electricity melting their flesh like hot breath dissolves frost. Viridian lightning raced from the emitter chambers of the Tesla carbines, dancing through the crowded knots of alien bodies, lighting spot fires in their filthy robes where it lanced through them. Before the alien screams crescendoed, before the tangled stream of HRUD could reverse their flight and take shelter in the tunnels, before even the crack of Tesla carbines ended, the Immortals picked new targets and fired again. Tesla cannons stay above ground, ordered Trazen. Dial back Gauss blasters. Limit beam emitters. Enable beam limiters to affect flesh and blood only. Any being who so much as scorches a bas relief in the burrow's chapels gets remade into a mining scarab. Will you supervise personally? Inquired Sennett. Trazen had planned to, of course, stream his consciousness down to one of the Immortals, ensure the job was done right. And yet, Trazen had no palm stitch, no spine to tingle, no stomach to knot when he sensed a thing out of place. Yet he still possessed a subconsciousness. It was an irony of the Necron race that, despite all their technological mastery, the workings of their own minds remained a mystery. Trazen's neural systems had been wrought by transcendent star gods, whose ways were mysterious and vicious. Trazen did not understand how it was possible, but there were still things locked away in his mind, buried, felt rather than known, like a sense of danger. He conjured a phosglyph panel, split it into 5 sections, and searched through the inscription code, slowing down his chronosense so he could process countless libraries of data in seconds. My lord, fault protocols should have caught the Tesseract failure, he said. They did, Lord Archivist, but they failed. Obviously, sneering, pointing, the protocol should have been instantaneous. Instead, it took 2 microseconds. Aging systems? Somnance is... He caught Trazen's look and trailed off, casting his monocular downward as he searched for a euphemism that would not besmirch the Overlord's beloved gallery. Historic. In the alert systems, they were unaffected by this fault, I suppose. He looked down on his cryptech. This is sabotage, and not clumsy sabotage. Show me all all completed door activations and curatorial assets. Lord, Odd. Save the commentary from manuscript analysis, he snapped. Report. I have a gate activation in the reserved gallery space. Several. 2 standard solar orbits ago. Encryption key matches a swarm of maintenance scarabs that were not listed as active. Heading where? Light eternally burned in the Warren Gallery. Fuck. Let me try that again. Lights eternally burned in the Warren Heaven Gallery. It was the only way Trazen could stand to come here. He was not a superstitious being. Losing one's soul, after all, tends to dampen one's fear of the mystic. In the great necropolis capital of the ancient Necrontyr, filled with a blighted, death-obsessed people, was a funeral long before his species had imprisoned their minds inside bodies of deathless necrodermis. Indeed, stasis crypts covered Solemnus, each of his billions of subjects nestled in a sarcophagus that sustained their cold, metal bodies. It was the same on tomb worlds across the galaxy. But just because one was dead did not mean that he could not be haunted, and Trazen entered this chamber of memory with bowed head and soft steps even when he was not expecting an ambush. He kept to the deep shadows, reshaping the necrodermis on the bottom of his feet into spongy wire lattice that cushioned his armored tread. He kept focus, forcing himself not to look at the rows of plinths that surrounded him in a double line like a Pharaoh's honor guard. Oh, alright, catch you later, Cat. I hope you have a good rest of your day. They were enemies. Here, an Eldari stood mid-leap, the tip of her wraithbone dance slipper barely kissing the black display base. Next, a hulking Krork, mountainous shoulders bunched and slick with battle sweat. The Cainite warrior in green armor, crouched low, legs wide, weaving his chain sword forward and up as if hooking under a Lichguard's shields. The Jokero maintenance slave. And across from them, blank dummies were wearing the resplendent armor of ancient Necrontyr. A reminder of a time when they needed armor, before their bodies were living metal. The old times, 65 million years gone. The flesh times. Their long shadows met in the center, mingling as if they still battled. Trazen remembered the war. As chief archivist, he had attended every class that logistics allowed, recording impressions, taking samples, attending the embalming of each great pharaoh that fell to the old ones in their twisted creations. They were old mnemonics, blurry like plate negatives cooked by heat, burned away by the process of biotransference that had placed them in this eternal body. He could not even remember what his old body had looked like. At times his mind reconstructed an image, or what he thought was an image, for a microsecond. The curve of long fingers gripping a stylus, dark pupils staring back from a burnished mirror. Gone. Always gone. The moment his mind's eye tried to focus on it, a self-protection protocol. What came after the flames, that was clear. Titanic clashes, armies of metal marching with dire purpose into faltering lines of the old reptilian old ones. Imhotep the Stormlord carving through the piteous ancient ones like the Necrontyr death god they discovered was all too real. The dead gods, the ones that he had helped murder, mouths of fire as they feasted on innumerable suns. And then these Eldari and Krork, being so adept at their own particular aspect of violence. One all rage and clamor, the other grace and silence. These intrusive mnemonic routines ran in the background, passing in the span of a finger snap as he stalked forward, primary subroutines looking for evidence of the intruder. Scry filters layered over his oculars, searching for security anomalies that he could see, so the stasis field surrounding each plinth shimmering like the air above a candle flame. Protection against seismic violence in this most precious of galleries, the bulbous, ever-flowing swell of the magnetic fields pressed upon each other, ensuring that nothing save Trazen could pass without an alarm. Then he saw the hex, and relief flooded his cold hydraulics, because to think about this problem meant banishing thoughts of the past. Two magnetic fields had parted where they met, pinned back with technomantic hexes that burned with the blue-white glow of arcing electricity. Occult glyphs engraved on the very skin of reality. Trazen was no sorcerer. He had little talent for the occult arts and even less patience. Besides, he was an overlord. He had cryptex to deal with that sort of thing. Delegation was one of the chief joys of power. Yet Trazen knew hex work. He could appreciate the fineness of the calligraphy and the radiant strength inherent in the technoplasm. He took the mnemonic image records of it for his cryptex as he ducked through the break in the field. Trazen nearly missed the cursed snare just beyond it. Would have if he'd been anywhere else, yet he knew every atom of this place, and noticed the void-back glyphs on the ebony floor just before his foot passed onto their hexagonal boundary. Chronomancy, he thought. He conjured up his apathic obliterator and touched its glowing tips to the border. Be gone, he willed, forcing the power to course into the staff. The hex snare guttered and died. Hex snare guttered and died, snuffed out of existence as if it had never been. Perhaps it is not, now. The relic imprisoned in the obliterator, able to warp reality at times, was a product of ancient and forgotten wizardry. Wizardry that Trazen was eager to visit upon the form of Orican, for only the diviner would be so bold. Trazen found the astromant. Holy shit, how long is this chapter? How long is this chapter? Hold on. I'm doing something for my own curiosity. How long is this chapter? There's another 16 pages in this chapter. Jesus. Trazen found the astromancer where he least expected him. There were so many precious things in the Worn Heaven Gallery. Power plants of unknown manufacture, command items worn by the pharaohs of antiquity, an Eldari skimmer in the colors of a vanished clan, and above all those stasis displays floated a great metal conqueror worm. Seated on planets in the Necron fleet bypassed to hunt their population to extinction. This gallery, the old Necrontier gallery, was not but mournful curiosities, scrolls from when his kin still had eyes to read, long tar pipes, so pleasurable to those who had mouths to smoke them, a cane turned from hardwood, inlaid with ivory, its head shaped like the old hooked beak god of wisdom. Trazen knew the feel of that old god well. He'd spent much of his biological life leaning on that cane. And in the center of this melancholy chamber stood Orican, weaving hexes upon the air. Trazen is no fool, Orican thought. Or at least, he was not a complete fool. He'd been foolish enough to take such a small force down to the extite world, for instance. A force that was so easily besieged once Orican warned the primitives he was coming. A delicious irony to pillage Trazen's cultural treasures while he was away plundering the backwater world of some feral Eldari. But that foolishness was recent, compared to what Orican saw around him, for it had been Trazen's crowning folly to build this place, devoting his boundless, undying energies to a museum few of their blank-eyed kin could appreciate. Once the Necrons fully awakened, after all, how many would even be sane? Then again, The fool had proved far more resilient than Orikan's divinations and models had predicted. His escape from the Exodites, for instance, occurred with a speed Orikan's calculations had not considered probable. But that was treason, wasn't it? Born under fortunate stars, and always the statistical outlier, never having to work for it, that bastard. It could be the plagues. Abnormal chronostreams threw off his powers of divination. Intrusions from the Immaterium snarled the calculations, and this planet, well, Solemnus was a nightmare. So many objects and beings out of place, held ageless in stasis fields and tesseract vaults. 10,000 discrete timelines worth of chrono noise. He could feel it, even on the edge of the sector, the great cataract on the eye of the universe, a blood clot in the time stream. Solemnus would have to fall one day, but right now it was not his main concern. But the trash data had snarled his predictions more than once during his infiltration. Orikan had even been forced to reverse his paces and sabotage the HRUD burrow to provide a distraction. Thankfully, he had all the time in the world. Hexes and zodiacs burned around him, floating in the aether, pinning black layers of magnetic fields and diverting sensor beams back to receivers, masking his presence from the environment sniffers. All those layers of security for one inert object. Trazen either had some inkling of what this object did, or he was the most paranoid being in the galaxy. Perhaps the overlord of Solemnus believed that if something should be done, it should be overdone. I like that mentality. If you're gonna do it, it's worth overdoing. Typical Nihlaka attitude. It had taken Orikan 3 Necron-tier solar years just to get to this point, gingerly peeling back each layer of security. Nearly there. Final stasis field shimmered a gossamer blue as Orikan wove the spell, third finger and thumb of his left hand pressed together, marking the triangular borders of his working. Right hand dancing inside like a harpist, painting glyphs forgotten by most in the ancient days. Hexes so forbidden in the flesh times, any who spoke them aloud would have his teeth pulled and his tongue branded. It was perfect. He put his fingers together, spoke the final invocation, and snapped them. The hex flared to life, dripping purple sparks where the borders held back the field. Orikan tentatively put a metal finger to the center of the working and pushed it forward. Pushed it inward. Horns blared, gongs crashed, chamber lights snapped into the full burn of midday. Bastard. Orikan's olfactory transducers picked up on the hint of Gauss flares powering up. That bastard! The beam him in the back of his head, his reinforced golden headdress stripping, the beam drilling towards his precious neural spools. Orikan slowed his chronosense, ignoring the alarming heat in his cranial chamber, the way he could feel his mnemonic bank starting to smoke. The beam drilled, slowed, and stopped. Pain, or what pain Orikan felt out of uselessness, paused between throbs. A shower of sparks from his field-cutting hex dribbled and shut off. A frozen waterfall of electricity. Orikan completed the mental ritual, thought the words, and ran the chants through verbal emitter in his wickering tail to ensure the incantation was not altered by some extreme heat engulfing his skull. The beam withdrew, his cranium rebuilding itself. Sparks flowed upward into the border of the hex. Horns and war gongs sounded in reverse, their long reverberations building so to the crescendo of the first striker blow. Hard light shut off. His hands, independent of him, wove backward, unmaking the spell. And then he saw it. A Hecate glyph, insufficiently drawn. One of the staffs branching from the upper orb was unconnected, a spacer of 2 microns separating the spear of the line from the curve of the circle. It was what made the Astromancer discipline such a difficult one. Mastery required total precision and total focus. When one used arithmancy... Math magic? They have math magic? That's what arithmancy would be, by the way. It's arithmetic mancy, which mancy is just the way to say, like, you know, oh, I can do, like, chronomancy, which is time manipulation, or pyromancy, which is fire. Yeah, it's just math magic. God, the Necrons are nerds. Where was I? To shape time and space, even the slightest errors mattered. And with overlapping hexes, these complicated errors were easy to make. Is that a typo? Oh, no. And with overlapping hexes, this complicated errors... Okay, I'm just dumb. Even musing on Trazen, though it was but a stray thought in a tertiary subroutine, had been enough to force an error. This was why he'd been living the last 20 minutes over and over again. 3 years, cumulative, to get from the first plinth to the object that lay within. Orican took a breath, unnecessary biologically, but critical to focus, and redrew the hex. Then he activated the working and reached inside. Felt his metal hand, cold and gentle, close around the artifact and bring it out of the pyramid. A perfect tetrahedral pyramid, shaped from living metal. Glyphs glistened on its surface, incandescent in the low light veins of crystalline substance marbling through its substructure. Puzzle box, celestial compass, key. Depending on what you believed, it might be any of these. And he believed it was so much more. The Astrarium Mysterios, breathed Orican. Interesting, replied Trazen. I had wondered what that was. Archivist. Orican paired the greeting with a polite bow. It achieved the proper death and angle for a greeting of equal colleagues, but remained just shallow enough to communicate contempt. Astromancer, said Trazen, returning the bow with a nod, the proper gesture for an overlord greeting guests on his own world, serving both as a welcome and warning. It was consequently identical to the dueling bow. Had you announced your arrival, I would have arranged an honor guard. A figure of your reputation should not be wandering here alone. Kind and proper, my colleague. Kind and proper. Orican moved sideways, insectile. But I would not trouble you, especially since, for planetary overlord, you are so often away from Somnus. They were circling each other now, pretense dissolving. They'd long been rivals, back to the flesh times, and Trazen had frequently imagined what it would be like to land a blow on the diviner. But Orican's movements unnerved him. The curse of biotransference had made parodies of them all, but none more than he and Orican, while Trazen had been remade into a hunched, hooded thing, a scholar eternally at work. Orican's slight frame had twisted to reflect the soul within. He was all things quick and venomous. His face and headdress were called a hooded serpent. His curled tail, segmented back armor, and spindly limbs echoed the waste scorpions of the old capital. Divination orbs ran down his spine, swirling with a cloudy energy. A single baleful ocular, mocking the foresight the cryptex claimed to possess, gleamed with a haughty malice. Thievery is beneath you, Orican. Hand back the trinket, and perhaps we can continue your research under supervision. After all, I, of all beings, can understand the wish to covertly acquire... Understand? Orican snapped. To understand is not in you, Trazen. You're a bird building a nest with shiny things. A child with a rock collection. You want things to simply have them. Their true meaning, their use, is lost on you. Hurtful, chided Trazen. He dipped his obliterator so it pointed at the device in Oricon's hand. Even if true, I see no reason why that allows you to steal my things. You stole it first from the Amunos dynasty. The Amunos dynasty is not but inert metal now. You can't steal from the dead. It's called archaeology. The point is to memorialize, learn, and study what came before us. We look to the past to navigate the future. I prefer to look to the future to navigate the future. For instance, there were 27 times I could have attacked you just now, but none would have gone past your guard. Indeed. But 28 is a slaying blow. It came faster than Trazen thought possible. He slowed his chronosense, but it did no good. Oricon leapt to his left and conjured his star-headed staff. In Oricon's enhanced oculars, the jagged supernova head of the weapon blurred, a chrono field boiling around it. He was speeding himself up, his weapons up, creating a pocket of reality where time moved faster than the jagged sun cut right past his obliterator and sheared through his upper left arm with a shriek of parting metal and a gush of sparks. It buried itself in his upper ribcage and kept cutting. Trazen felt it lodge in his central reactor. A flash, battery acids and reactor fluid spouted in the air, flecks dotting Oricon's leering death mask where they sizzled like oil on an engine. Trazen went down on one knee. Thus ended Trazen, called infinite, mocked Oricon, twisting his staff deeper. Lord of solemnness, keeper of trinkets, peerless in arrogance, lord of forgotten... And then he stopped, because the face before him was not Trazen, but a mere lich guard. The obliterator swung from behind him, catching the diviner on his segmented backplates as he twisted to evade. It connected with a flash of searing light, a brightness so pure it overwhelmed Trazen's oculars, refracting and scattering in the lens so the world disappeared for a moment, then snapped back, painted in prismatic rainbow hues. The blow took Oricon off his feet and sent him crashing into a display case, shorting out the stasis field and denting the plinth with his shoulder plate. Ceramic ritual urns atop the plinth, their cracks painstakingly hardened with period-accurate resin, rocked and steadied. Trazen picked up the fallen puzzle box. I like to keep a spare body in this gallery, he chuckled. So much faster to stream my consciousness into it than to come by barge. Translation can destabilize the stasis fields, you know. Oricon tried to rise, legs twitching, sparks crackled from his broken spine. So, my valued colleague, let's have a short symposium, shall we? You were referred to this as the Asterium Mysterios, but surely you don't believe it's the real thing? Most likely a copy, a curiosity meant to represent the object of legend, yes? You don't know what you have. Oricon's vocal emitters buzzed and skipped from the power overload, interrupting his crow-like voice. He pulled himself along the floor, hauling his crippled form upright so he leaned against the plinth, twitching legs trailing unnaturally to the side. Always a slave to past. Even you knew what it was. You wouldn't
possess the vision to see it.
Trazen opened his palm and cast a stasis field, pinning the diviner in place from the second vertebrae down. A slave to the past, a lack of vision. Perhaps, my dear astromancer, perhaps. Trazen tossed the puzzle box into the air and caught it again, delighting as Orikan's monocular vision widened in distress. The casualness was feigned. He plotted the object's arc 200 times before making the throw and put it gingerly into his dimensional pocket. But you are a slave to your visions, with no sense of the past. I suppose it is our natures, yes? My lot to preserve, yours to predict. Oh yes, I see you do not like that word, predict. No doubt you think it clumsy. Well, I have a prediction for you, dear Orikan. He released his obliterator. It stood immobile, balanced on its pointed haft. I think that's supposed to be a shaft. And held a hand to his steely forehead, as if glimpsing the ethereal. A vision of your future. The glassy floor rumbled as the ancient tomb doors grated open. Monoliths rose around the gallery, scraping against the time-worn slabs as they ground from their stasis chambers. Inside each one stood a sarcophagus niche, shrouded with milky green fog. The vapor washed heavily towards the floor, lit from within like storm clouds as animation systems crackled to life. And as it sank, the fog revealed crested helms. Dispersion fields and bladed weapons stood ready in inert hands. A phalanx of lich guards, eye sockets dark. In my vision, I see you as a permanent addition to this gallery. You are, after all, a priceless antique, are you not? The Orikan the Diviner, seer of the Necron tier, maker of predictions, who warned our kind against accepting the deceiver's horrific bargain. He chuckled as he raised the Astrarium Mysterios. I think I'll put you somewhere where you can gaze on this, just out of reach, for eternity. The worst thing about biotransference, said Orikan, his voice recovering, is that in the flesh times you at least stopped to breathe once in a while. Trazen laughed. I've always envied your acid tongue. He rapped the floor twice with his obliterator shaft. Perhaps I'll display it separately. The Lich Guard's eyes flared as one, popping like fuses. They lowered long, war-sized, snapped shields into position and advanced. A contracting circle of metal closed on the diviner. You call me a predictor, Trazen, spat Orikan. But mere prediction is no longer of use to me. What use are visions when the powerful refuse to heed them? You march to your doom, believing the deceiver's promises over my auguries. Why speak truth to those that are deaf to it? Hyperphase blades vibrating in and out of reality drew closer around the diviner. Energy fields sizzled in the dry air of the hermetically sealed chamber. They were 30 steps away, then 20. Since you all turned your back on me, my powers have grown, and I have changed my focus. Trazen could see the Astromancer's cranial coolants were running at triple capacity, beads of condensate pumping on his golden hood and running down to sizzle on his long skull. Why predict the future, said Orikan, when I can reshape it? How else do you shape the future? Said Orikan, a smile in his avian voice. He fixed. I used the wrong voice for that. How else do you shape the future? Orkin said, a smile in his avian voice. He fixed Trazen with a stare. By destroying the past. Trazen saw the blow just as Orkin's head twitched. He threw himself forward, shouting on an interception trajectory before he knew he could not succeed. There's no way to be faster than the Chronomancer. Orkin's head slammed backward into the plinth behind him. Metal dented and cracked. The levitator array shorted out. The eggshell-thin ceramics, rotating like priceless constellation, dropped. The diviner spoke an arcane word that burst the stasis field and scrambled out of the way, hands clawing for purchase on the floor. Half-functioning feet launched him off the plinth, slamming the ground like pistons to drive himself forward, scrambling and then crawling. As he moved, his body superheated. Welding damaged pieces together, ghostly vapor twisted up from the severed vertebrae of his spine, cables seeking each other out like bloodworms sniffing for a mate. Trazen cared not. He dived for the falling relics, slowing his chronosense to try and make a decision. It was mathematically impossible to save them all, but one he could save one priceless example of Necron-tier ceramic work. Working angles and possibilities, he chose a bright purple jar, Sawtek, 4th Dynasty. A scene of the midsummer sky above the Necron-tier homeworld, a star field shining through the glaze of twilight. It fell directly into the cup of his hands, so focused it was that Trazen could see the imprint of the potter's fingerprints beneath the bright paint. But Necron hands were not meant to handle such fine poetry. It contacted his palm and crushed inward, cracks shooting through as if a summer lightning storm had split the sky of Trazen's long-forgotten homeworld. His chronosense dialed back to its slowest. Every moment of the jar's destruction played out in individual tragedies. Around him, ceramics fell like hail, scattering painted shards as they smashed together on the floor. "Barbarian!" Trazen roared, his restoration protocols already running a damage analysis, matching pot shards as they break, pattern and sorting artistic styles as he shouted commands to the Lich Guards. "Nihilak! 12th Dynasty, kill him! Thought 19th Dynasty, kill him! Ogdebek, 13th Dynasty, kill him!" Orikan called the fallen Staff of Tomorrow to his hand as if it were a living thing. The first Lich Guard bore down on him before he could even stand. A mistake. Orikan scuttled back like a crab, thrusting his staff at the Lich Guard oculars. When the Tomb Guard raised his dispersion shield, the diviner scythed the staff in low, the blazing halo of its headpiece severing both legs at the ankles. As the guard fell, Orikan sprang to his feet, slamming the pointed shaft of his staff into the fallen warrior's segmented throat. He shot an electrostatic discharge through the staff and overloaded the foe's neural matrix. The warrior's oculars awakened after 60 million years of sleep and then winked out. Orikan ducked, a war scythe passing the finger span over his head. He kicked out backwards, destabilizing the opponent, and broke off, dodging behind a display of golden-laid smoking pipes to buy himself a moment. The Lich Guard recovered and stalked towards him. "Idiot! The ceramics!" shouted Trazen, hastily casting the stasis field around the ruined shards. "Watch where you step!" The Lich Guard stalled, turned, and went around. They stalked a wide perimeter around the outside of the priceless debris field, their circular formation growing ragged, holes in the net developing as one group pressed in faster than the other. Orikan circled around the pipe display, keeping it between him and the closest guards, his back momentarily shielded by the broken ceramics. "Surrender the Mysterios, Trazen, and this can all end." "You have broken all covenants, Astromancer, all rules of protocol. You destroyed the last example of our worlds." And as Trazen said this, Orican planted his foot against the display and shoved. For a sickening instant, it creaked over like an axed tree. The racks of pipes held an impossible symmetry until the stasis field gave out and they crashed down at the advancing Lich Guard. "Stop!" Trazen pleaded. The ancient pipes shattered. Bowls that once held Dreamtar husbanded in forgotten temple gardens scattered broken amongst the feet of the Lich Guard, who froze mid-step, torn between the command to advance and the one that prevented them from damaging the artifacts. Orican put his shoulder against a case of surgical instruments and heaved, grabbed a disintegrating scroll and threw it across the chamber like it was a streamer, completing his barrier of antiquities, his own warding circle of defacement. The Lich Guard halted, awaiting orders. "If you wish to treat with me, scribe, come inside." Trajan obliged, vaulting the debris, channeling power through to his leap, his obliterator swinging down like a great hammer. It swung down on Orican's staff, the iron clang of their meeting echoing off the halls. For an instant, the lodestones of their weapons touched, sizzling and popping like power cables in water. Trajan shoved the diviner backwards with the shaft of his obliterator. Then the staves swirled and clashed again, wheeling so fast they left spectral fans of energy in their wake. "Vandal!" Trajan roared, thrusting his obliterator like a spear. "You have destroyed objects made by craftsmen, dead long before we breathed, pieces of a past that can never be remade." Orican parried, rolling the blow upward and leaping sideways to avoid the downward chop that followed it. "Useless things, fetishes of a vanished past." Trajan reversed his obliterator and slapped the staff into Orican's side, staggering the diviner. The chronomancer backpedaled, wisps of radioactive aurora twisting from the burn in his lower thorax. Trajan came on again, his fury burning, circuits red-hot, flared hot, viscous electrofluid pumped through his system like magma. Neither of them were warriors. For Trajan, the dust of the archive was more familiar than that of the parade ground, and Orican had spent eons training his body and mind, and neglecting his body. Had this duel occurred during the flesh times, it would have been comical. Two withered ancients, rangy and short and round-shouldered, stained with ink and smelling of incense, tearing at each other with barely the strength to bruise. But biotransference, for all its horrors, had made every Necron an armored juggernaut. The two swung at each other, filling the gallery with the sounds of the forge. They locked weapons, shoved and bashed their plated skulls like horned beasts. The Lich Guard looked on, impassive. They knew an aristocratic duel when they saw it, though none had seen one quite like this. Orican broke away, whirling. "Give me the Mysterios, Trajan. I will tear you to..." Orican sent the Staff of Tomorrow spinning at end over end across the chamber, its head burning in the air so it left the afterimage of a discus as it scythed into a case of antiquities. "No!" Trajan smashed the obliterator down, and the diviner met it with the logarithm of Sullet, conjuring a swirl of ochre void that he wielded like a buckler. Incompatible realities clashed, the solar flare of the ancient weapon meeting the lightless aether in the backfire that extinguished the tiny portal and threw the obliterator from Trajan's grip. Such was his fury, he cared not. Trajan leapt upon the Astromancer and beat him with bare fists. Each clashing blow left imprints on the living metal of Orican's necrodermis. Orican tried to scuttle out from under the archivist, but Trajan grabbed a string of ritual tiles and dragged him back so roughly that one tile sheared off in his grasp. Alarm gongs and trumpet klaxons filled the air. Swarms of restoration scarabs crawled down the walls like curtains, their auto-instinctual protocols calling to them to preserve the scene. Trajan saw none of it. His oculars were deep focused on Oracan's fist slamming down over and over, sparks showering from each blow. The diviner laughed. His body's as resilient as theirs could do little aid without the aid of phase weapons and flares. Yet Trazen kept hammering, beating the diviner into the ground until he felt weak. No, he was weak. Only then did he notice that the diviner's questing tail wrapped around his throat, closing off his cable artery, pinching off the coolant that kept his neurals from overheating. "Barbarian," Trazen said, rolling to the side, his anger spent. Oracan sprang to his feet, ready, called his staff. "This can end, Archivist," he crowed. "Surrender the Mysterios and it will stop." Trazen struggled to his feet, metallic dust from the pulverized floor shaking loose from his scaled cloak. Is it truly worth so much, Oracan?" He spread a hand at the destruction. Hold on. Hey, sorry about that. I had dogs yelling at me. And they immediately left because they were upset that I had my door closed, and then they immediately went to see what was up. Gotta love it. Where was I? Trazen struggled to his feet, metallic dust from the pulverized floor shaking loose from his scaled cloak. Is it truly worth so much, Oracan? He spread a hand at the destruction. What is it worth to me? What it is worth to me is immaterial. The question is it worth it to you? What is it worth to you? Is it worth every object in this gallery? Because I am willing to pull this chamber in upon itself, if that is what is required. Our heritage, our legacy. If it is so important, sacrifice one to save all. Trazen wiped his hands together, a nervous habit from a time long ago, so long ago when they were eternally stained with ink. Calculations whirled in his matrices. If/then logic problems were created and discarded. If he orders the Lich Guard to advance, the artifacts become irrecoverable and Oracan destroys the gallery. No. If he attacks Oracan, then Oracan continues a rampage. No. If he gives up the Astrarium Mysterios. Trazen slid long fingers into its dimensional pocket and withdrew the Mysterios. Such a small thing. Insignificant, really. A curiosity. A replica of the mythical object that never existed. Or at least he had assumed so. Oracan, clearly, thought different. A bargain, Trazen said. His voice had a tinge of desperation so alien that he saw two of the more sentient Lich Guards exchange a glance. You are a chronomancer, perhaps the greatest of your kind. You can undo this destruction. It would be nothing for you. Oracan paused, considering. I can. Then do it. First, hand over the device. I am not a simpleton, diviner. Oracan spread his hands. You have me surrounded. Once restored, you may well resume your interest in my, preservation. Shall I give away my one point of leverage so easily? Trazen hesitated, stepped forward. Oracan withdrew a step. Trazen placed the puzzle box on the ground as carefully as if it were a newborn and stepped back. Now your part, he said. Oracan's eye narrowed, and just for a microsecond, Trazen thought he detected regret in that gaze. He did not step forward to take the device. The difficulty, Trazen, is that undoing the damage means traveling back in the timeline before all this occurred. He met Trazen's gaze. If I did that, You would have no memory of this accord. Trazen saw the transdimensional beamer. He knew what it meant. Canoptic wraiths use them to banish unwanted construction debris into an extra-dimensional space. A large-scale version of the pocket dimension he kept at his own hip. Orican's snapshot caught the mysterious, lancing it out of existence, sending it somewhere in the great nowhere. Trazen died for Orican as the diviner turned the sidearm on himself. By the time Trazen's hands got there, nothing occupied the space but empty air. Trazen the Infinite, archivist of the Solomon's Galleries, stood in the center of his ruined past, and howled for revenge. This is a good book. I really like this book. But also, I've been up for a very long time, and I'm now very tired. Actually, how long have I been up? Let me do some math. Oh, I've been up for 16 hours. I might call it here, actually. Son of a biscuit eater, though. This is a good book. I need a bookmark. I'm gonna use a proxy MTG card as a bookmark. Bezelgius, you're gonna guard my book. Wicked. So yeah, that's gonna be it for now. Genuinely, I want to know what you guys thought. Do you guys like this? Do you guys think I do good at this? Do you think I should never do this again? Genuinely, I want to know. Yeah. If you guys actually enjoyed this, I will begin the process of installing video editing software so I can cut it down. So that way, if you guys just want the reading part, then I can do that and get that for y'all. But otherwise, what am I doing today? Super late tonight, probably. Assuming at some point later tonight, either this evening or like tonight, I will be probably playing some Darktide with the homies. It'll be open lobby. And tomorrow I'm playing Borderlands 2 with Firehead and Blair and Dorex. So if you guys want to watch that, that's tomorrow at my usual evening time. So like 9:30 to 10:30 p.m. EST. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for being here. To anyone who's still here, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. I'll catch y'all guys later. Bye.